everyone, and welcome back to Anne's Family Recipe. The Kentucky Derby is coming up this weekend, and last year I filmed a video of mint julep sweet tea and a pecan bourbon chocolate chip cookie pie, also known as a Kentucky Derby pie. And it was amazing. I'll link that for you below. But in the comments of that video, one of my longtime subscribers suggested that I try the recipe for Kentucky Burgoo, which is a soup slash stew. It has lots of meats in it, and it's a traditional dish for the Kentucky Derby. So I filed that away from last year, and the Kentucky Derby is coming up this weekend, and I'm making some Kentucky Burgoo. I started by adding about a tablespoon of olive oil to my Dutch oven, which I was preheating over medium-high heat, and I added in about 1.5 pounds of stew meat, a quarter of this boneless pork butt or pork shoulder that I cubed up, and then 2 bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs. So I was sort of catering the recipe to my family size just for one weeknight dinner, but of course you could make much more here and use all the meats that you buy, but I just saved my leftover meats for other meals throughout the week. So my first step was to brown all the meat. So I started with the stew meat, and I salted and peppered each meat that I added. So I cooked this, sautéed it for a few minutes until it was brown. Then I removed that to a plate and added in the 2 chicken thighs and the pork shoulder that, like I said, I cubed up, and I browned this on all sides. I removed all the meats to a plate, and then I sautéed my vegetables. So I decided to use 3 carrots that I diced up and 1 onion that I just roughly chopped. Here you could also add some celery, which I really don't like, so that was immediately omitted from my recipe. You could also add in some bell pepper if you like. I was a little worried that that flavor might be slightly overpowering in the soup, so I kept that out as well. Once the carrots and onions had softened, I added in 3 cloves of garlic that I had chopped and just sautéed it for another 30 seconds or so. And then I added all the meats and their juices back into the pot. Next, I poured in 2 cups of chicken broth and 2 cups of beef broth. Well, almost 2 cups of chicken broth. I lost a little bit there over the side. But I thought this was interesting to combine the 2 flavors together. That beef broth gives it a little bit of richness and depth to the broth of the soup. And then for additional liquid and flavor, I used half of a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes, and I also threw in a bay leaf here too. Then I stirred that all together, brought it to a simmer, and then reduced the heat all the way to low and covered this, and then I let this simmer for about 2 hours so the meat would get nice and tender. So after those 2 hours of cooking, I added in 1 potato that I had peeled and roughly chopped, and then I also removed the chicken thighs, which you can see here are already ultra tender, and I took off the skin and bones and shredded up the meat and then added that back in. And then I put the lid back on and simmered this for an additional half hour or so, or until the potatoes were tender. At this point, I added in 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, which adds an awesome savory flavor. I think this is one of those quintessential ingredients in any iteration of burgoo you might find on the internet. I also added in half a can of sweet corn that I had drained, and then half a bag of lima beans. Another kind of traditional vegetable that I did choose to omit is okra. I just didn't think my kids would like the texture of that, but you could definitely throw in some frozen okra here too to make this a little more traditional. And then I let this simmer for another 10 minutes or so, and the burgoo was ready to go. Now, Worcestershire sauce is pretty salty, but you can definitely taste your broth and see if you want to add any more salt to it too. I wanted to show you here, the meat was so tender. I picked up all of the little pieces of pork shoulder and shredded those with forks too, just to kind of help them evenly disperse throughout the soup. and this had such incredible flavor. It was warm and hearty, a little bit unique with the 3 different kinds of meat. I loved all those flavors together, and everybody in my family really enjoyed this. It was great with some crusty bread, it would be good with cornbread, and it would be perfect to feed a crowd on Derby Day. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You can follow me over on Instagram at Anne's Family Recipe and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you so much for joining me here today in my kitchen, and I'll see you again soon.